Good afternoon. My name is Jinshan Ren. I'm currently working for Oregon Department of Transportation, but this is my independent project. I've driven myself for this project for a couple of reasons. Maybe starting with a joke, actually. 30 years ago, when I did my first simulation project with the Snoqualmie Ridge Parkway in Washington, my boss asked me, can you simulate the accident? As I was presenting to about 10 people in the audience. At that time, everybody laughed. Now, this time, nobody laughed, so it may not be a joke. But that's never left me because, 30 years ago, I was using Passer 2, a very primitive, simulation software. So the title is very long, I cannot read. It's a proposal to simulate and quantify vehicle, pedestrian, roller clashes, conflicts at the signalized intersections. So should a pedestrian rollers deserve the clearance interval? That's I'm trying to have throw one stone to get two birds. But if you bear with me, you probably find more birds than I do. Okay. So this one doesn't. Maybe I should. It's different from the machine. Okay. So here you see the picture, right? It shows the vehicle, the pedestrian is waiting for crossing the crosswalk, and the car was driving on the yellow, maybe the last second of yellow. Okay. Then it turns red, right? So the people will cross, take the last second of yellow, will be on the red. It is red. However, if you don't give the pedestrian all red clearance, the pedestrian crossing, some could be jogging, could be running. You just use your imagination, especially at night, people jogging or e-scooter, this kind of situation. Also, if you use imagination, if the pedestrians here, they're crossing from the other end, there'll be close clash with the vehicle, which, they'll not run, they're just trying to clear because they're giving the last second. So if you're using your imagination a little further, if the pedestrian are at the entrance of the vehicles, that even could be a crash, right? So unfortunately, 35 years ago, I was in that situation at Portland downtown. After college, I was trying to cross at night also. Apparently it's a walking signal. I was walking. So there's a van, I don't know whether it's red or what color, is trying to go down the hill, taking the last second of red. Fortunately, he saw me trying to cross. He pushed the brake. So I was eye to eye with him within inches. So that left me a deep impression, gosh. So this thing, I was fortunate I didn't get killed, otherwise I wouldn't be here. But then, reincarnation happens. Just last New Year Eve, I was close outside of Salem downtown. I saw a situation similar to what I was killed, just like 50 yards away at the intersection down Liberty Division. A guy was already on the road trying to cross using his walking signal, and the car was trying to run out of the downtown, right? He was trying to take the last chance, that's the red signal. He was trying to cross. Fortunately, that guy was fast enough. He ran back immediately, and this guy who was driving the car zigzag cross almost crashed me because I was on the other end. Gosh, that was giving me a scared look. But if you really want a joke, I want to tell you, maybe this is a joke. So that night, when I got home around 11 o'clock, I hit a big bang outside. I didn't even bother to go out to look what's happening because maybe somebody was doing the firecracks. But second morning when I got up, somebody driving a car crashed my car, the tree of my side yard, left a very bad situation and then ran away. So that reminded me, maybe this is something serious, remind me all the accidents. So I thought maybe I should do 10 months of investigation. Should do some investigation about the situation in Oregon or some other. I live in Northwest for 35 years. Unfortunately, the next month or so, the councilwoman, the Salem councilwoman, former councilwoman, she got a crash on her bike in a similar location down Liberty Union. So I investigate, I look at all the intersections. They're all like this one, as I shown, without red clearance for pedestrian and the vehicles. So that's the real situation. I'm going to look at let me make this a little bigger, gosh. I can hardly read it, but I remember them all. You know, you look at national statistics about traffic, you find that, oh, how come, you know, the pedestrians, the vehicles, the crash rate went up significantly, 78% from 2009 was the lowest, but the population growth was like less than 10% from 2009 to 2023. Maybe there are a lot of things happening, scooters, e-scooters, and you know, the improvements was not a lot of them happen in urban areas, particularly 23% at the intersections. And as I saw that also, you know, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., that time period is at night. The accidents, pedestrian related, happens, you know, I think this 18% of the total crashes are pedestrian death. If you talk about fatality. So also the same thing for bicyclists. Bicycle also crash rate went up significant, 63%, not as bad as pedestrians. So Texas has 94%. And the one thing, you know, which actually alarmed me is Oregon. This is reported from DOT, like actually 2013 to 2022 has one of the highest traffic fatality growth. Actually, is #1 in the nation. It's 93% for 10 years. Fatality growth. You know, 38% are happening at the intersection. This table is actually taken from the safety section of the ODOT. So you see the growth of those things. So because of that, I want to maybe let's take a look at the nationally about the, you know, signal timing, especially focused on the yellow CCI, yellow change and the clearance intervals. See, right now I'm just focused on the red clearance. This one has been historically used quite a while since 1994. As people have, research group has been, you know, trying to improve that. Actually, signal timing thing has been in the research for 60, 70 years. So I tell maybe that's close to my proposal because my boss, he has 30, 40 years plus my 30 years. That's also 70-year proposal. That's what it is. I was thinking about that. If you look at this Colorado DOT, they have very comprehensive coverage about the signal timing for the red. You know, it's goes with counterintuitively. If you go with speed increase, your red clearance should be decreasing, but they limit it to 1 second. You know, Washington State DOT thought this is very good, very comprehensive, cover many all kind size of intersection. If your size increases, you take more time for vehicles to clear, right? So you have to increase the red clearance time for the vehicles. And this is the FHW has another guidance. This is the ODOT guidance, Oregon's. Then you have a Florida, they say you have to have at least 2 seconds of red clearance for vehicles in the design. Like here it says, you know, the Federal Highway Administration follow the right intuitive on the guidance. I don't know, for some reason, Oregon DOT's guidance just reversed the others. I was talking to my manager about that. He said Oregon is partially restrictive, you know, red clearance. So I still get no answer directly why it goes reverse the other order. When your speed increase, and you should have, you know, decreasing. So it's one of the issues. Also, I want to look at the research field. You know, it has a big research field about signalization. When people look at safety, you know, traffic safety study, there's a shortcoming. They have to look at a few years, like especially you put a new signal timing, they don't know the result. Or maybe they do 3-year evaluation before, after. They look at 3 years later, they found somebody hold their hands. No? Oh, okay, I thought you had a question. So, you know, before after study is very costly, very time consuming, but also is a reactive approach. What's an active approach? I think modeling can take an active approach. That's probably why my boss was asking that question. You know, Snoqualmie Ridge is a build. You can, if you have time, you can visit. Snoqualmie Falls is beautiful, close to Ben Stabler's house, right? You used to live there. Okay. So I only pick up the recent ones. The 2020 ITE released about the specifically the traffic timing, for change interval. They have a specific, improve the guidance. Unfortunately, it doesn't cover pedestrian related, so that the safety benefits of yellow change for pedestrian is not determined. It's not like traffic, signal timing change clearance still need a research, after 60, 70 years. However, Federal Highway Administration realized that issue. They know, surrogate safety assessment model is a good way to look at, how the traffic conflicts at the intersections, signalized intersections. So they spend, I think it's 12 years from, here showing that 10-year, I think they started beginning of the century. They develop the research methods, why surrogate safety assessment is a good way to tell, whether your accident was potentially happening or not, because everybody knows conflicts is a lead to crash. But it depends on how serious your conflicts are, what type of conflicts. So somebody did a research like 20,000 conflicts at the locations. They have the formula, is a complicated formula to have an accident. So that's why they prove using conflict simulation is a good way to tell to tell the near misses or crashes, rather than using the pre and after analysis studies. For some reason, that SSAM was not quietly used. Partly it was using the output from Vision or from other simulation software. And then somebody has to do that data. The output is showing the profile of a vehicle, time space diagram, all these things, every vehicle. So they have the process data to generate conflict locations, even though they can animate that situation. I found a couple other things that could be related. They did not take spatial time, like, I have that called vehicle distance, minimum vehicle distance to the object. They didn't take that seriously. They all look at time. I think previous always about accident, people think, it's minimum time to collision or post encroachment time. But because of my own experience, I think this distance is more, it's not abstract. Time is very abstract. When you talk 0.1 second, 0.2 second, nobody knows. But if you give them the distance, you have to measure the conflict in terms of distance spaces. That would be helpful. Also, you need to define, what type of conflicts. Be very clear. Is that the forced conflict or is that the unforced conflict? I'll give a little bit talk about that. Oh, sorry. I want to look at the first situation, the real case, using a very simple case, do scenarios. Look at the 5 different scenarios that I can think of. I don't know, in the real world, probably there are more. Like if you don't give, first one is no red clearance for vehicle and pedestrians. Second, you give, clearance for vehicle but not pedestrians. So far forth, even including last one, the leading pedestrian, interval. This is the 5 types I can think of. So I want to go to the very basic simulation about the 1 second red, because we all know simulation is like cartoon, is picture by picture. If I remember right, the wisdom using 0.1 seconds for every picture to show the animation. Now, for my purpose, I only can show quarter seconds. So using the red because people are in the section trying to clear. If you don't give red clearance to the other approaching, they're starting to move. There could be vehicle or pedestrian rollers. I identify, roller 1, 2, 3 pedestrian across the intersection. This is similar to the intersection picture I was trying to demonstrate. I use a preliminary engineering paper to draw them to scale, the speed, the time, all these things, to show the conflicts as identify findings of different conflict situation at that 1 second red. So if I go by 3 seconds, because that's 3 seconds from yellow to red, then to green or keep red. That's really critical for that conflicts happening. I'm just focusing on that conflict situation. So the first picture is for all the scenarios the same. The second one is they all move at different times. Here you can identify they're like 8, there are 6 pairs of forced conflict. There's a vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to pedestrian, vehicle to rollers, because they don't give no clearance for everybody. Assuming everybody is just following the regular rule, but of course, in the real situation, people could stop and wait on different kind of situation that happens. But what I'm trying to show is that you can count the conflicts has 6 pairs, But if you look at the second scenario, if you give no clearance to vehicle, but you give to pedestrians, so pedestrians starting walk up early, right? So you still have the conflicts. You have 5 pairs of forced conflicts. I call them forced conflicts because they are following the rules. 7 vehicles and 3 pedestrian roller conflicts. So that's scenario B. Scenario C, you give all clearance for vehicles, but not for pedestrians. So you still have a conflicts. You still have 5 pairs of conflicts. Vehicle, pedestrian. You can count them from the second page. Those. I assume they are moving in that moving situation. However, if you go D, you give pedestrian vehicles or rollers all 1 second red clearance. You reduce the conflicts quite a bit. You reduce to 2 pairs of forced conflict, like only 2 vehicle and 2 pedestrian. That's only because of the right turn vehicles. They're trying to, at least you clear the intersection for the vehicles, pedestrian running at the same time at the intersection. There's another one, scenario E, actually, you give them all 1 second clearance interval, but you want a pedestrian, have a leading pedestrian. You actually give vehicles a little bit more. I see some location they give 2, 3, or even 4 seconds, depends on how many pedestrians are moving. So in that case, I cannot find any, conflicts because that clear the way it is, right? Clear the way there's less conflicts. So I'm trying to see if less conflicts is less accidents. So what I do, I went through, I live in Northwest, as I said, I surveyed the 50 to 100 intersections in Oregon, Washington, Vancouver, BC. I just want to see how they do. I was very personally curious. Are they really taking, this is what I found in Oregon, I randomly, really random. I'm not purposefully trying to track somebody. I know Portland has a lot of following the same D. Portland is mostly following the standard. No matter how many you give, it's all the same way. I actually go to visit Portland a lot, but I found other locations that vary significantly. Has a high percentage on the A and B, A and the C. B is the less though. Then I look at Washington, sorry. I got mixed up with all because I lived in Washington 20 years. And I saw Washington, was doing mostly on the E and the E, especially if you look at downtown, there are some Bs for outside local, like Aurora, because they're outside of downtown, the speed of 55 miles an hour. So at side street, they do give some B level. So I look at Vancouver, BC, Victoria, some of the other cities when I travel there. It's purely random. I pick those intersections. They have a lot of D in the E level. So as I said, I show this scenario A through D through conflict reduction, number of conflict reductions, right? So this, I just give a summary of that. You'll find that Oregon has high percentage on A, B, and the C. There are some, only Portland City, they don't follow, Oregon DOT's rule. They're just using their own standards. They have a E, but last time when I present this to our unit, one guy said, they're trying to do E right now. So that's what in Washington, 87% in the D and the E, there's small percentage on the B, and the British mostly is like, 62% on the D and 38% on the E. But intentionally, I put the traffic fatality rate in 2022 at the bottom. So you see, like Oregon is much higher, like 1.64 fatality per 100 million vehicle traveled. If you look at Washington, they're like 1/3 less, 0.25. It's the same standard from the National Highway Safety Administration, NHTSA report. Also, Canada has a report for them. So I interpret them, translate the kilometers to miles. Again, they are lower, that's 0.76. They are very equivalent to Massachusetts. Massachusetts in this country was bottom 2 for the lowest accident rate. wise. Okay, one thing I was talking about SSM. SSM was researched for 10 or 12 years, but it was put on the shelf in the US because I cannot find many research afterwards. You do research, okay, but nobody follows suit. Vancouver saw that as a good thing. They did look at the validated 83 intersection using that SEM model. And there was another case, I think it's a Scandinavian country used the SM to evaluate the pedestrian bicycle, but that's all of the picture. So the question up to me is this a coincidence? Why Oregon has high accidents than the others? Or is this because of the signal design at the intersection maybe needed to improve that? How do we convince them to improve that? I mean, I try to use as simple methods as I can, the simple diagrams. Okay, I want to go back to the fundamental of this SM. They define the conflict very well in diagram. One is the point diagram, the other one is line. Point diagram at the conflict is mostly at the intersection. There are a lot of point, because traffic movements. So they have a lot of time, 1, 2, 3, to describe time to collision, the encroach time, the post-encroach time. So I want to borrow this to illustrate my points. I'm trying to see if that can be a little bit improved. So, I mean, that movement can be any conflict movement. It can be pedestrian, can be vehicle, can be rollers, right? So assuming that you see that they didn't draw that line particularly with any pattern. But the line, the vehicles, movements is the number one, because in simulation, if I remember right, in the system, they have a conflict area, then they have priority. Whoever got in conflict area, the other guys have to yield or something like that. That's exactly the case, because the vehicle going through the curve at that point. I don't know how to use this point. Maybe it's not. I think you probably get my point, and because this is not a rocket science. So they see there's an object, conflict object, that's starting to reduce speed, right? That's a simulation can only do. If you don't reduce, you got run into that guy or that vehicle at a conflict situation, right? So then that's why you have to reduce the time to get to the point you want to get to. But I think a very important thing is the vehicle distance to the collision that was not even discussed in this diagram. You want to be very, concrete, just look at that. And another thing, the delay is actually the accident saver, because they have to delay to reduce the causing accident, right? If they don't delay, they will run into the pedestrian or vehicles. That's how this diagram is trying to show you. I read somewhere, I think this diagram was used by the autonomous vehicles to have safety issues. But I don't know, last 2 weeks ago, Federal Highway Administration called back 2.88 million Tesla vehicles for autonomous vehicle safety issues. I wonder if the distance was part of that issue. Because you can see a signal, but signal could be 100 feet or 2 feet, depends on how you look at that. That's very important. So on the other hand, that safety, the delay was a safety guard if you don't have that delay. But you want to evaluate both the distance to collision and also the delay. If you want to get too much delay, you lost the efficiency of the vehicle operation, right? So what I'm saying is you want to quantify them reasonably. First of all, you got to define the unforced and forced traffic conflicts, because in this research field about safety, 94% say, I mean, not 94, one research say 94% is this victim they cause that issue. They either get drunk, they drive not carefully or something, but that only 6% they still don't know the reason. So how about we have to look about, is that a forced conflict? If you play tennis, you got a forced error, unforced error, right? So these things happen in the real traffic world. Same thing, you have forced error, which could be forced conflict, could be that bad system. You have unforced, could be drunk driving or aging or perception to time, all the other issues. So I think it's good to redefine them. Adding that spatial temporal profile. because we know since simulation already provide every vehicle, every moving object, the profile, the outcome of the time space, we can easily measure the vehicle distance to the conflict. I mean, the minimum to collision. You can calculate every pair of vehicles, how they, I mean, or moving objects, how they're distance wise. Take the minimum, then you count them. I mean, you let the computer count them. You cross tabulate it. The reason I suggest a cross tabulation, because sometimes people. I mean, if the vehicle moving 5 miles an hour and the pedestrian 3 miles, they're like they're 3 feet. The speed is a dynamic situation. The speed for both objects has to be considered. Then you have to cross tabulate. Then you take another element is the time. Oh yeah, is the space. So that's why I randomly plot that if it's 1 feet, 2 feet, 3 feet. So you plot them, you can show, this scenario may have more close to 1 feet, a more high speed level. So this is something to evaluate the real situation of that conflicts. So it may not be exactly an accident, but it's more likely to cause an accident. So that's how you tabulate them, put in the graph. So another one I want to say is like, the further research to simulate and quantify unforced conflicts. So I want to go to the next page to tell what I actually went through, quite a few research papers. I said maybe I should put a summary. What's the important? There's a vehicle types, because right now you have heavy vehicle buses percentages. You have a EV or penetration, like somebody was discussing about that. Then the vehicle size effects, all this when you do the simulation. Right now, I don't know how the wisdom has been considering them. I saw some, using the acceleration or like aggressive driver, those things. That's the speed dynamics. Like, speed ranges. When you do a simulation, not everybody following the same speed, even though you say it's 25, people could be 20 or could be 25, 35. That's why the conflict could vary if you have the vehicle driving speed difference, right? So acceleration, deceleration could be different, depends on how people see that conflict potential, that decelerate. Some people trying to accelerate to pass away that, the guy. That's why accident happened, right? And then there's left turn through. I mean, there's new research about that, why the red clearance should be given differently from left turn, because left turn usually turns slower speed. And another suggestion is travelers' behavior. Like people drive aggressively, not aggressively. Age group, some community has a lot of, in Oregon in particular, a lot of different communities have higher percentage of aged people. And then also perception reaction time. Something people have to remind, the kids' reaction time is a lot faster. I read a paper, especially at those intersections, the kids run faster. They because they see it fast, they see maybe in split second, we may see it, oh, it's yellow in 1 second. Depending on aging, that has something also, it's very important to take those into consideration. The running yellow, there's like usually that 10% are running red, sorry. But a lot of states they allow that, right? 39 states has a permissive, and 10 states which is partially restrictive. One state I forgot is Virginia. They're only, very restrictive. They like you cannot run red lights no matter what. They give you tickets for that. Okay. So of course I would think this temporal spatial, is very very important to consider, the proximity of people of vehicles to each other. Speed, yeah, what I'm talking about, trying to say, we should add that element about the space, because when we talk of time space, we cannot separate them. Whenever you talk time, you have to consider space. They all have. It's just like traffic simulation, right? Accident is traffic simulation. Somebody said that accident happened because he was in the wrong place and wrong time. They cannot say he was in the wrong place, but if it's not wrong time, that could not happen. So the reason I present this, I was just wishing, this is a long proposal, aged proposal, but I think it's worth consideration sometimes with the technology, with all this, people still have a lot of research to do. I think, especially commercial, once you're trying to put some research into commercial, I was very hopeful that PDV dominate the simulation, right? Why not take this? Because they're using your stuff, they're using your profile output. You just add a little bit of elements, do a little bit counting. You can just show people, if you do this scenario, you may have more conflicts. But is that conflict is an accident or not? It depends on how the cross tabulation would show. So that's why I do my own background study. I thought that that could be helpful to the community. If you have any question, I think what's his name, Andy.
Interesting presentation, very good. My question, I guess what I'm interested in, I mean, were these the type of facilities that would have like dilemma zone sort of detection to extend green so people aren't surprised by the clearance interval? So maybe they're, with the red light running or going through the intersection, maybe it's because the dilemma zone detection wasn't there. That's my first question, just like.
Oh, you mean the signal design in do they bury any loop, detect all these things?
Yeah.
I have no clue. I have not going deeper. I just look at the phenomena.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
I mean, another observation is, I mean, actually our Uber driver did this a few nights ago. I mean, I think it was like a 6-second yellow time.
Mhm.
And I mean, that's like eternity. You see yellow from really far away. The guy knows it's 6 seconds yellow. He guns it just to try to go through. He went through on red, the Uber driver. So again, if it was a 1 second red, it's exactly that situation that you're talking about. But I mean, I think there could be those strategies where with the dilemma zone detection, maybe you change the yellow interval to like 3 seconds, and then you have like a 3 or 4 second red, just to make sure people are stopping when they're supposed to and not have this long yellow duration, which really in a lot of cases encourages running the light, honestly. I don't know if those things were studied at your end or if you looked at those things.
Actually, I thought about that. I thought why Oregon particularly, don't give all this red. I wonder if they don't have the loop detector. I mean, I was thinking about because I live in Washington. Washington follows better. I mean, in terms of what I described, I saw here, and I wonder if the system is very limited. The signal is limited. They may not be able to give the pedestrian vehicle the red clearance because they may not have a loop detector, may not have a delimit zone, all these things. Maybe they're limited by that situation. I give one case which actually, because we live close to the live and work close to the railway track, there are lots of intersection accidents. There are like 5 signalized intersections. But when I look at the lights, gosh, I can hardly see the red clearance for vehicles, not even pedestrians, right? When I talk to the city engineer, they say, oh man, there's a split seconds, 0.5, you probably can't tell. But if you add 30 feet of railway track, plus people driving across railway track very slow, they don't try to get even 35 miles, they try maybe 20 or even less because it's bumping, right? So they should give at least 1 or 2 seconds red, but they don't give that. This may be a joke. I want to make a joke anyway. One morning, after I talked to the city engineer, I flew across that Marion Street 12 close to work. I said, is that what really split second or no red clearance? In the afternoon after work, I came back from the same way. There's a crash of 3 cars. That's really, shaken me. I said, gosh, I will not ever, after that, I never look at any other intersections. I don't want them to have an accident away because if you suspect that could be it.
Any other questions?
See, if the conflicts between the vehicle and the pedestrian are different among those scenarios. Have you done any?
I thought about that. Right now, I only do manually. Maybe next stage, because we have a group, our unit that do listen, the withdraw, whatever. But they should maybe put this into, But we have not got into SSM. However, my manager who told me, he said that Minnesota DOT was looking at that seriously. He may get me involved. I may want to be participating to how they use the SSM model for different situations. Yeah.
I can find a student help you to do that for free.
I did it for free too. Yeah, I was thinking one time, I was seeking one of the guy who looked like director of ODOT. I'm going to present. I want to get his remind. Maybe that's a reminder, you know, the director has to put a funding or some emphasis on that, because this is something worth doing. Even, you know, yeah, even for PDV, that's what I was thinking, you know, in my mind.
Thank you.
Thank you.